Welcome to Metron. Those of you that are logging on, we went from BJ not being here last week to him having to do everything today because he's filling in for Charles. What are you supposed to sing when I say that, BJ? That made me laugh. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Y'all come on in. Hello, hello, hello. Glad you're here. Spirit of God, we acknowledge your presence. Where can we go from your presence? We acknowledge your omnipresence. God is all, Christ is all, and is in all. When we come together, we create a synergy that is special and unique. Where two or more are gathered together, there you are in our midst. And we thank you that today something happens that's special and unprecedented and has a larger effect, a butterfly effect that will cause greater things to happen because of what we do and say here today. We thank you for it in your name. Amen. Please remain standing. Let's do the prayer, please. Our Father who art in heaven, presence of divine love and light that lives within us and within all of life, hallowed be thy name. We invoke the powerful creative nature of all that is sacred and holy. Thy kingdom come. We embrace the healing essence that is the kingdom of heaven within us. Thy will be done. We accept our greatest good as we, with our divine nature, on earth as it is in heaven, knowing that the affairs of our lives reflect our evolving consciousness. Give us this day our daily bread. Each day we receive great blessings from within and throughout all the activities of our lives. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We accept the divine nature of all things and all people, including ourselves, as we move away from judgment and toward greater awareness of divine presence. And lead us not into temptation. We shall be vigilant in experiencing the oneness with all life. But deliver us from evil, as we are learning to live without fault-finding and suffering. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. For we accept the consciousness of divine perfection with all its power and glory right here, right now, and forever. Amen. And so it is. Before you're seated, y'all come on in. Before you're seated, we're glad to see Tricia here today. Tricia had a very serious spinal surgery a few weeks ago, and it's amazing that she's here. And the walker is just temporary, but I went down. I was doing the tour of Starbucks earlier this week. I had to meet with Mayshawn, and then I had to drive down and meet with her. When we got through down into her neck of the woods, somebody had parked so close to her car, she couldn't get in there. So I squeezed in, and then I couldn't figure out how to get her fancy schmancy Lexus to work. I'm like, I know she wondered why I kept waiting in there. I'm like, how do you? I know how to do the push button thing, but I can't get. Anyway, we got it done, and so I'm glad that she's here. Tell somebody you're glad to be sitting close to them or next to them, and then you may be seated. You can be seated. Thank you for being here today. Several things I want to tell you. First of all, our outreach this month is to the Empty Stocking Fund. We're always glad to do that. Obviously like to do that at Christmas, and we've given to them several times before. A lot of these organizations we revisit just because I really believe in them, and so that's part of where your giving is going this month. This coming Friday night is our Christmas event at the Hamilton Howell House. Clarice Miller-Park's going to be there, and Johnny Almanza's going to be there, and there's still time for you to sign up if you haven't yet. Go to bishinthenow.com. We got people flying in, coming from out of state for this, and I'm looking forward to. We got turkey and dressing, green beans, sweet potato souffle, broccoli souffle, steamed vegetable medley, banana puddings, there's some other additional desserts. There's also a fire pit in the back. We're going to do s'mores. We're going to sing Christmas carols. It's going to be great. If you've got other plans, cancel them and come to this. This is more important. This takes priority. Wellington's in Toronto, and he texted me. He said, I'm going to Toronto, but I'm going to be, by God's grace, I'll be back Wednesday. I said, what's Wednesday? He said, the Christmas thing. I said, Wellington, that's not the Friday the 13th. Enjoy your trip. We'll see you when you get back. So that's good. Then we've got, this is new. Y'all remember Beck Cranford? She's going to be with us on January the 12th. She's going to do an In the Now with me. Her new book just came out. And she sent me a copy. She underlined all the places where I had been mentioned. So that was very thoughtful of her. So I appreciate that. And there's nobody like her. I can't think of anybody to compare her to. That's what she sent me. So looking forward to that. And then a couple of weeks after that, we've got the Meditation Weekend number 24 coming up in Helen, Georgia. That's January the 18th and the 19th. You can just click on the group page and it's got all the information for that. Also, for any of you that are interested, I'm doing the eulogy at Jaquita's service this coming Tuesday. It's going to be at Word of Faith. And if you don't know her, that's Brenda. Brenda's not here because she's had her own physical challenges this year, but it's Brenda's daughter. And that's her. She's been to a couple of our meditation weekend. I met with her husband, Mayshawn. That was when we were up in Blue Ridge. And it's a heartbreaker. And Mayshawn said, I don't want any sadness. She wouldn't want any sadness. I said, well, I'm going to be a little sad. I mean, I'm just like, this one is kind of a heartbreaker. But anyway, excuse me, Word of Faith's been very accommodating and communicating with me where to come and everything. Very, very, very thoughtful. So if you can be there, I think it's at 11 o'clock this coming Tuesday, the 10th. Busy week. Come on in. Just came in from the club, I know. Felicia stays out on Saturday night. Before she goes home, she stops by. You know I'm going to bust your chops when you come in. You know what you're going to get. It builds character in you. We got a busy week. You know, this was sort of a life lesson again. But remember I told you a couple of months ago I went to my teacher's house that I loved her so much. Well, that day, I sent her, she'd given me her phone number. We were communicating on Messenger. So I sent her the pictures from that day, and I said everything was perfect today. I loved it. Thank you so much. She didn't respond. And, you know, when I knew her in the 70s, she was, like, really cool. She was super cool. And I always want to be cool when I'm around her, so I thought maybe she's too cool. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was us. She was my 10th grade English teacher, but she was also the sponsor for the school paper, and I was the editor for that. So I was with her a lot for about 3 years, and she definitely influenced my thinking. Anyway, I knew they were going to Europe, so I texted her a couple of weeks after that. I said, have y'all gone on your trip yet? And, you know, a couple of times I'd reached out and no response, so I thought maybe she didn't want to be that close, which is okay. Just be glad for what we had. You know, I better leave that alone because I don't want to be I'm General Swilley. I don't just text people. People are honored when I text them. You don't respond to my text. I ain't texting you no more. Do you know who I am? Do you know that people would love to have a text from me? Anyway, we had to drive out. One of his coworkers, it was their little boy's 1-year anniversary, so we had to drive out there yesterday. And on the way there, she messaged me and she said, "Hey, we need to get together. I want to meet Ken, and we need to plan a dinner." And I said, "Well, I've been texting you," and reply. It was a digit was off. So all this time, it's not like I was jumping off a cliff about it, but I just thought, you know what? She's just not into. Be thankful you had your little time with them. You're not friends. So we're going there Saturday night because I said, okay, well let's do dinner for 4 at Opry DM. I was going to take them out, and she says, no, why don't y'all just come to our house so we can talk loud and stay up late. I'm like, oh, I guess we are friends. But it just goes to show you sometimes you get this thing in your mind that you think, well, I guess she needs her space, and I'm not. No, she said, no, I want to meet Ken. I want you to come. I want you to stay a long time. Oh, okay. So anyway, trying to get all my paintings finished this week. I've got several commissions, got 3 done and 2 more to do. But I just think the more you do, the more you can do. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What'd you say? I do. You, Felicia. Don't act like you didn't see her. She's still in the front row acting holy. She's praying for did you see those backsliders coming in? I'm like, no, you were with her. It's funny. I'm not a bar guy, but when I first came out, I kind of did the tour of the gay bars in Atlanta because I thought, well, this is my community now. So I think the place is called the Heretic. Some of you probably know where that is. So I'm standing in line, and I've got there's like a cover charge. When I walk in, all I hear is, "Hey, Bishop Swilley, hey, Bishop." I'm like, where do I know you? Oh, I play the organ at. Every choir director, every organist from it was like church in there. Like, oh, Bishop, we love you so much. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is the Heretic. Well, tell your pastor, Bishop so and so. I said, hey, same thing. Especially, I guess, because I've ministered in black churches more than in white churches. But there's another one. It's called Bulldogs. It's up on Peach Street. I went there one time, and it's like everybody from New Birth and Creflo Dollar's church. And I walk out on the dance floor, and everybody's, "Hey, Bishop, how you doing?" Like, okay, praise the Lord. This wasn't quite what I was visualizing, but, it's Saturday night. Y'all going to be at church tomorrow? Oh, yes, sir. I got to play the organ tomorrow. I'm like, okay, well, praise God. Is that TMI? Did I give you TMI? Bars aren't really my thing. It's like, okay, I came, I saw. I'm like, enough of that. Was there anything else I was going to tell you? I think that's everything. BJ, I'm not going to make you do extra time to play BJ the DJ today, but unless you can do music, can't you, Michelle? From where you are? Let's do it. Let's do about a little 5-minute. One of y'all give me some music. Let's do a little meditation, if you will, and get yourself. Let's believe for music. Sorry about that. I should have given you a heads up on that, BJ. But if we don't have any, it'll be fine. We can just breathe. But sit up straight, relax, get comfortable. We're going to inhale and hold it, and then exhale in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's go in, hold, and then exhale. Inhale, exhale. busy week. You got a busy week coming up right now. You're in an oasis. You're in the eye of the storm. So just become centered, present, conscious. Safe, peace, you're serene. He makes you lie down in green pastures and leads you beside the still waters. Restores your soul. Leads you in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you fear no evil. He's with you, his rod and his staff comfort you. He prepares a table before you. In the presence of your enemies, he anoints your head with oil, your cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life, and you will dwell in the house of the Lord. Just let that saturate you. Some affirmations. I am well. I am wellness. I am whole. I am wholeness. I am peaceful. I am peace. I am blessed. I am a blessing. Good breaths before we come out of it. Inhale. Exhale. Good. That felt good. Michelle, you're on it today. Everything I mentioned, you had the picture as I'm saying the words. You were like, that's crazy. Now, I just got an offering from you. I thought y'all were lazy sitting at home because y'all were out at the club with Felicia last night. So I was about to say into the camera, thank you, Dale. I just got your offering, but you're here. I misjudged you. I forgive you. Say what? Okay. Was the proverb says a man's gift makes room for him. You want to give some more? Go out and come back in. Let's see what else you get. I was talking to Leslie earlier this week, and she said, last week whenever it was that I was talking and I got a call from Mom's place, she said, I thought that was timed, like you had timed it out to illustrate a point. I said, no, that was the real thing. I mean, she had already called me, and because it rings on my Apple Watch, so I ignored that. But then when her place called, I thought, oh, what is it? Anyway, no, that was the real thing. Anyway, glad y'all are all here. Tricia said this week when I met with her, she said, it's great streaming, but there is something about the energy of being in that building. It's a completely different thing. Come in. And welcome. Hello. Come in. If we're ready for the word, I speak into this atmosphere and I say, let there be light. Welcome to the Metro and Live podcast, coming to you from the Atlanta Theater in the Kirkwood neighborhood. Metro people, would you please give the podcast people a hand? Let you know that there are living, breathing people here. In case you don't know, the initials ITB means in the building. There's so many acronyms now. I'm constantly Googling them. Like somebody will write me something and they'll put some initials. I'm like, what you talking about, Willis? Like, what is that? And I Google, oh, that's what that is. Somebody, they were telling me something sad and they were writing LOL, and I thought, that's weird. She thought it meant lots of love. And I said, no, that's LOL. So when you're telling me a horrible thing, maybe LOL isn't your go-to acronym. Anyway, I started a series last week that I feel very strongly about. I think this is important. And the title is Fear Not, Manifesting the Psychological and Neurological Power of Good Tidings of Great Joy. It is a Christmas message, or we connect the dots to the Christmas message. So we start with Luke chapter 2, verse 10. You're familiar with it. In the King James Version, it says, and the angel said unto them, fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. That right there is the gospel in microcosm. That's what the gospel is. It just means good news. It means don't be afraid. It's based on good tidings of great joy, and it's a message of inclusion. It's to everybody. It's not to any one people group. If you had to find one verse of Scripture that would encapsulate the message of the New Testament, it would be that. This is it. Every time Jesus appeared after the resurrection, like I said last week, he never said boo. He said fear not. It was always to calm you down. If you hear a sermon that makes you afraid, you have not heard the gospel. The gospel should always, it's just good news. There's no esoteric hidden meaning in that. Like if you looked it up in Strong's Concordance, there's no nuanced shades of meaning. It just means good news, period. If you go to church and you feel worse when the service is over than you did before, you did not hear the gospel. You heard somebody ranting and raving about something, but it was not good news. Now, having said that, I don't know what your spiritual journey was like, and when I think about my upbringing, my childhood, I'm reframing everything with yes and instead of either or. So I'm trying to embrace all of it. But I can tell you the kind of church vibe I was raised in was not conducive to good news. Like if you weren't scaring the hell out of people, you weren't preaching what I grew up in. If you weren't just ragging on somebody and talking about sinners and talking about sin and how angry God is, that's not preaching. And so some of us were raised on that. A lot of times when I'm talking about Pentecostalism, I'll refer to Eddie. His brand of Pentecostalism is a little different from mine, but also a lot of similarities. I would imagine not a whole lot of good news. I mean, once there was a movement of the Spirit, that was fun. But the preaching was generally, get your house in order, thief in the night, judgment's coming, sinners in the hands of an angry God. That's what you were supposed to be doing. They actually used to call it plowing the gospel plow. The preacher firmly plowed the gospel plow. That was from a gospel song. He said, you must repent, so down the aisle I went. So the whole thing was about, it wasn't good news. As a matter of fact, in the church I grew up in, we had, some people called them altars. They were like at the front of the church. But the real words, the actual name for them was mourners' benches. You would go up to the mourner, because that's where you did the wailing and the gnashing of teeth and all that kind of stuff. Roe was raised Roman Catholic, so you knew the whole mea culpa thing. And at least with Catholicism, if you go to, ideally, if you go to make a confession to a priest, he can at least absolve you. You know, say this Hail Mary, do that. So there was some idea of getting to the end of it. In Pentecostalism, we never got there. It was always, you got saved last week, and we were so afraid we were going to preach eternal security like the Calvinists did. We preached no security at all. So if you didn't get saved, you just kept going and rededicating and making promises to God. The idea is that God's just not all that happy with you. And even in the modern charismatic church, I rarely had an issue with any of the worship leaders and the songs that they chose. But sometimes, even in a church like Church of the Now, sometimes the lyrics of the song would still be, I'm a hopeless case, if not for grace. I'm like, oh, that doesn't resonate with me anymore. I don't want to believe I'm a hopeless case. I don't want to believe that in my flesh dwells no good thing. And so, the idea of good news, when you've had a steady diet of bad news, good news seems very foreign. It nearly seems irresponsible. What was really weird to me, I remember one of the last connections I had with my previous denomination. There actually came an edict from the headquarters. Everybody needs to stop preaching so much love. They thought, y'all are talking too much about love. Y'all need to, in their minds, it was, you need to balance that with some judgment. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I was driving down, I won't say which church it is. It's a huge church on I-75 that I pass frequently. But I remember, I think about it every time I pass this church because it's a beautiful structure. But I remember, he's passed on now, but I remember we used to support Safe House with Philip Bray. And Philip used to do a thing where he would bring churches. I did it with Church of the Now. You'd come down to the inner city, and they'd have a bus, and they would take you on what they call the Unholy Land Tour, and they'd show you all around Atlanta where, here's where the hookers are, and here's where the crack is sold, and all that. Of course, I ruined it for him because every place we'd stop, I'm like, this is where I went to grammar school. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be the Unholy Land Tour. It's just I know these people. But he called this one pastor to ask him, and this man actually said, because this church is famous for having a very high percentage of millionaires in it, he actually said to Philip, I'm not called to the poor. He actually said those words. He said, I'm only called to the wealthy. And every time I pass there, because my mom watches him, and she, they're very MAGA, and I'm like, even if you thought that, the fact that you could even say that, and now you've got churches now that that won't even teach the Beatitudes because they think they're too woke. They don't want the Beatitudes, they want the Ten Commandments. And, you know, to me, that's when 1 John says the Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist is already in the world. That to me is Antichrist. I mean, it just is. It's against the very nature of the good news. When these angels appeared to these shepherds, they did not say, if you died tonight, where would you spend eternity? They said, fear not, don't be afraid. Good tidings, great joy, everybody. That's it. Even on the day of Pentecost, when those 120 people come out of the upper room, and the people in Jerusalem heard them speaking, they said, do not we hear them speaking in our own language the wonderful works of God. Now, again, I was taught in Bible college, don't tickle the people's ears. You need to, you got to preach judgment. And I think, really? Because when I read the Gospels, the judgment that Jesus had was for the religious. Like the people he came down hard on, it wasn't the people at the parties. It was the whitewashed sepulchres filled with dead men's bones. That was the religious hierarchy. But that's been very reversed now. Let me show you this passage in the Jonathan Mitchell New Testament. Very wordy, but this is verse 10. It says, and so the agent or the messenger says to them, stop being afraid, do not continue fearing. Look and consider this, for you see, I myself am now bringing and announcing good news, a message of ease and wellness to and for you folks. Great joy which will progressively be for all the people or will continue existing in the entire general public. Now, there's no downside to that. It's like this good news will eventually reach everybody. If they haven't heard it yet, they eventually will. Now, the reason I'm talking about it this month, yes, it's because of Christmas, but it's also because I want to look at, and we did this last week, what is the attraction to bad news? What is the effect of exposing your mind to bad news on a regular basis, and how does it affect brain chemistry? And last week we talked about, there's a little thing, I've seen diagrams of it. It's a tiny little thing in your brain called the amygdala. Amygdala it's the word almond because it's almond-shaped. And evolution, in an evolutionary sense, it was for protection. It was so that you, like when somebody says, I don't have any fear at all, I think, well, you should. There's some things you should be afraid of. If you're completely fearless, you just walk out in traffic and I ain't scared of that car. Well, it's going to run over you. So there's that. And, you can't be stupid about stuff. He watches local news more than I do because it's on in the shop where he is. So he told me, he said, a guy was shot and killed in Centennial Park. We live in Centennial Park. The guy was shot and killed, so a lot of people were afraid to go to the game was yesterday at Mercedes-Benz. And I said, I didn't hear that, but it was people in an altercation. It's not like people are randomly shooting innocent people. But I also, because I grew up in the city, so I'm like, I see people getting shot. I'm like, well, at least a deer didn't run out in front of you. That's what I'm scared of. But then Friday, he texted me. He said, you want me to make reservations at Ted's for 8 o'clock? And I said, okay. We walk it up there because it's my Centennial Park. And it was fine. We were fine. The thing is, you can't live in fear. Sometimes when I'm out walking, I'll take a picture, and somebody says, well, you need to be careful. I'm like, this is my neighborhood. I mean, you need to be careful. I mean, I could tell you stuff that's happening in Conyers and Covington, and there's scary stuff everywhere. The only real safe place is the secret place of the Most High. Now, that being said, you can't just walk through a rough neighborhood saying, I got lots of cash on me right here and I'm not armed. I mean, that's not smart. And then you got the snake handlers who took it to the nth degree and said, I'm not afraid I'm going to handle these snakes. Well, the snake's going to bite you. There's not many of them left because so many of them got bit by the snake. Like, Jesus could have said, that really wasn't a good idea. But the amygdala was to, it would technically take a picture of dangerous things so that when you saw them again, you would have immediate recognition, and that's where the fight or flight reflex comes from. The downside is you can exercise the amygdala to where you're too afraid of everything. When I used to have to stay with my grandmother a lot, and I don't care how prepared she was for you entering, she still would holler when you walked in the room. It still scared her. I can't tell you how many times she'd be washing a dish at the sink, and I'd say, "Hey, grandmother," and she'd whoo hooey, and she'd throw the dish. So I would get to where I'd say, "Grandmother, I'm walking into the kitchen right now. It's me, so don't throw anything." I went through something. My dad loved guns. He had so many guns. We still find guns hidden in the house all these years later. I'm like, good God, how many did he have? And at a certain point, he didn't recognize who I was. So that was scary. One time in particular, this was the Holy Ghost that saved us. We had moved in when Mom and Dad was taking care of my dad, and I was painting up in my room. So I called down to Mom and said, "Have you got a towel or something I can put under this easel? I don't want to get paint on your carpet." So she came up. She looked, ashen, and she said, "When I went to get the towels, there's a 38 loaded." I said, "Good Lord, he had one in the towels." I said, "Give me that." So I put it in the thing. Well, that night Ken was involved with it. It was a bad night, and he kept thinking Ken and I were intruders, and he walks out of the room, and I followed him to see where he was going, and he's like going through the towels. I thought, you don't know who I am, but you remember where the gun is? I'm like, thank the Jesus that we found that day, And my point is that's a reality. I mean, it was a terrible, difficult time in my life, but I can't live in fear of it either. We had to. You do all kind of stuff that you don't know how to do. We found out. I guess I don't know what's okay to announce or not, but Joan and Sophie are expecting, and they're having a girl. They found out so I have another granddaughter. But then I'm telling it. So we at Thanksgiving, Brandon and Kinley were there, his youngest. So we're out by the fire pit, and I'm making conversation with him. I said, "Well, Jonah and Sophie, they're pregnant. I'm going to be a grandfather again." And Brandon said, "You're not the only one." And we're like, "What?" So they're expecting. Jonah and Sophie are expecting in April, and Brandon and Kinley are expecting in July. I don't know if I'm supposed to announce that, but I did. I'm tired. I can't remember who I'm not supposed to tell for what. What did you say I was like, Sonia? I'm like water. I can't hold it. I'm transparent. My life's an open book. But my point in saying that is I remember when I was married to Jared and Christina's mom, I remember coming home from the hospital, and when Jared was born, I'm helping her out of the car, and I pick up this baby, and I think, what the hell are we doing with a baby? We can't have we don't know what somebody's made a terrible mistake. We need a nurse. We don't know what we're doing. I just remember looking at him thinking, dear God, what are we going to, but everybody that had kids felt that. And, we figured it out. He's, 41, so he's made it. I thought I was going to lose him lots of times, but so far he's still here. Just did the turkey for us at Thanksgiving. But I remember thinking, dear God, I don't know how to do this. Well, I guess I figured it out. So you can't be afraid of life. You can't be afraid of adulthood. You can't be afraid. I remember my first apartment. I was so into that little apartment. I always wanted to be. These kids that don't want to leave home, I don't understand. I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait. I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to pay my own rent. I loved that feeling of independence. And like I think the first night, it was a little apartment on Frederica Street. They've turned it into a condo now. It's a little one-bedroom apartment. I just thought it was the bee's knees. I loved it. But I got my first night there about 3 o'clock in the morning. Boom, 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 boom on the door. I look out the keyhole, and it's cops. And apparently the person who lived there before I did was running from the law. And they came to arrest him. And it was real scary. And they said this guy's name. I said, that's not who lives here. And he said, you better show me your ID right now. I'm like, yes. Yeah. That was, let's just say, I didn't sleep much that night. I mean, they came in and they looked around and said, not me. I just moved in here. Okay. And I remember they walked out thinking, y'all aren't coming back now. For several nights, I didn't really fall through because I thought, I hope whoever they're looking for, he's not coming back here. And then when the guys who lived upstairs, one of them threw his partner all the way down the stairwell and said, well, this is life in the city. That's why when I'm out walking and people say, you better be careful, I'm like, I'm good. I've been around the block a couple of times. You can't live in fear. But this amygdala can be developed in ways that becomes counterproductive. So not just in a spiritual sense this month, I want to look at in a neurological sense. What's the attraction to fear? Why? You may have a relative or somebody that every time you talk to them, they've got bad news. And you think, why is it that you're so prone to bad news? Why don't you hear good news? Because for every bad thing you hear on the news, there's 1,000 good things that happened that day that's not reported. Here's what I want to show you about this. This is it's a website called Science Direct. And it says, the amygdala is an almond-shaped mass of gray matter in the anterior part of the medial temporal region that is concerned with emotional responses. It's from the Greek amygdalum, which means almond. It lies just in front of the hippocampus, close to the temporal pole, and blends with the medial temporal cortex. Although the amygdala is involved in all types of emotional responses, both positive and negative, it is particularly important in situations that elicit anxiety, fear, or rage. The amygdala integrates diverse sensory, cognitive, and other information to help determine the emotional significance of a particular situation. In other words, it's there for your protection. It's there for you to notice danger and respond appropriately. But it has to be managed. It has to be monitored. An important role is the identification of potentially harmful circumstances and triggering appropriate autonomic responses like fight or flight reaction via projections to the hypothalamus and brainstem. It has therefore been described as a danger detector. The orbital region of the prefrontal cortex exerts a moderating influence on the amygdala, which can alter or inhibit emotional responses based on context or previous experience, like fleeing from a snake encountered on a forest floor, but not in a zoo or a pet shop. The amygdala is also involved in implicit learning, particularly during emotionally charged situations or fear conditioning. This may be of relevance in anxiety disorders, including phobias and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So what this is saying is, when you've been through danger, when negative things have happened, which it's happened to all of us, um, you have to learn how to compartmentalize that and not let it shut you down from life. Because if everybody opted out of living just because they'd been through some scary thing, nobody could do anything. Y'all were talking about car wrecks today. Well, everybody, how many of you drove a car here today? You drove with the full awareness that people die every day in car wrecks. Did it keep you from driving? No. You figured out a way to compartmentalize the fear. You put your seatbelt on and you stopped at red lights and you obeyed traffic laws. That's all you can do. You still have to drive. How many of you have ever been hurt in a relationship? You don't need a show of hands because it's probably been everybody. You can't go through life assuming that your previous relationship is your current relationship. Just because it happened before, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen again. It's kind of like in Psalm 124 where he says, when the Lord turned the captivity of Zion, we were as them that dreamed. In other words, we'd been slaves for so long, it didn't seem possible that we could be free. And that happens. You remember in Shawshank Redemption at the end of it when, what's the actor's name? James Whitmore. He had been in prison for like most of his adult life. And when he got out, he didn't know. I think he ended up committing suicide because he didn't know how to. He said, I haven't gone to the bathroom without somebody telling me it's time to go in decades. I don't know how to be free. It's like when people say, well, slavery wasn't that bad, because a lot of times when slavery was outlawed, people stayed on the plantation. I think, well, what was their alternative? I mean, it's like, it's not that it was a good thing. It's just like, well, what am I going to do if I go in the next town and get lynched? I mean, at least, freedom brings other things with it. This always impresses me when I think about that. The thing they have at Disney World, which it's like a natural habitat zoo. I can't remember the name of it, but it's where the animals run free. And they had this opening day where they were going to, all these animals had been incarcerated for years, and they at a certain time, the gates were going to open. And so the crowds were there to see these animals galloping out of their cages. Not one came out. They were terrified of freedom. And it took them forever. I remember having a parakeet that I like to never got that thing in the cage. And then once it got acclimated to the cage, I couldn't get it out. Because you get acclimated to fear and you get acclimated to bondage. And Joe Dispenza talks about how the hormones of stress are as addictive as crack cocaine. And sometimes when you disconnect from stress, you don't feel like yourself. You don't know how. That's why I think meditation is really important, because relaxation sometimes isn't the natural flow of things. Somebody has to tell you to relax. I do it sometimes. If I've got a real busy day, I'll be driving in traffic and I'm sitting in a strain. I mean, I'll be at a red light like this, and I have to say to myself, why are you sitting like this? It's not going to make you get there any faster. Yesterday we were driving out to the house was in Millersville that we went to. Well, we got right about to Covington. There was it must have been a terrible car accident, because we probably sat on I-20 for an hour. And it's one of those things, we're not moving. I mean, there's gas in the car, and sit here and listen to this Christmas music. I may doze off a second, but being upset about it it's not going to make them clear the debris any quicker. And so I many times have to say to myself, why are you sitting like this? Let your shoulders down, relax, sit back. You're going to get there. Just relax. Is that true for anybody? Because you get conditioned to stuff's got to be done. I got to do stuff. I went to my building had their Christmas party Monday night, and I was talking. There's a couple. If you saw pictures of Santa Claus and his elf, she has worked for forever at Piedmont Hospital, Northside, and she's just retired. So I was asking her, what's that like? And she said, I'm having to learn how to, because for all of my adult life, I hit the floor running, and now it's like, well, I guess I'm going to make the coffee now. And I said, I'm always interested, because I'm in your age group, and some of y'all have gone through retirement. It's like, well, it's a whole new, it's not that you don't have responsibility, but it's different. I mean, it just is. And it's a rite of passage. And if you've worked hard and you're ready to do it, you should do it and enjoy it. But it's going to require that you change the way you think about things. It doesn't mean you're not productive anymore. It just means you're not on the deadline that you were. And deadlines get ingrained. They're in your DNA. I remember when I was in college, we always ate so fast because we just had a short amount of time. Like, you only got like 30 minutes for lunch in between, and it was a big campus, and I got conditioned to eating fast. It's not really healthy to eat fast. And I still have to make myself, sometimes I say, just put this fork down just for a minute and just sit here for a second. You're not in prison. Nobody's taking this food away from you. Stop scarfing it down, because I can look at a plate of food as a mission. Like, food must be eaten quickly. I have consumed mass quantities. It's like that's not enjoying, the experience. Let me show you this. I don't remember what's next. Oh. This is how trauma affects the brain. There's the prefrontal cortex. That's where rational thinking regulates emotions such as fear responses from the amygdala. With PTSD, this has a reduced volume. Again, there's some things you need to be afraid of. If somebody says, no, don't be afraid of that. Well, no, that's, even when Christina was here last week, because I try not to, she's an adult woman. I try not to, be a helicopter dad. But we were talking. I said, Christina, just when you're out hiking and stuff and you post pictures of it, it just makes me nervous. And she says, well, usually Scott's here with me. He takes the pictures. Okay, that's good. It's just, I've watched a lot of documentaries about women that disappeared in national forests, and I'm glad you like that. I mean, I know you're a woman. I hear you roar. I mean, I get it. I applaud. My kids run the gamut on the conservative to liberal scale, and Christina's, the nth degree liberal. She's, my granddaughters have been to many Black Lives Matter marches, and which I'm glad for that. I don't tell my mom that, because my mom would say, isn't that dangerous for them? I'm like, no, we're allies of the African American community. I think white people are welcome there. They're not in danger. But I couldn't help but say, just please be careful when you're out there. So I am. I said, I won't tell you what I said, because I don't want to put that energy out there. It was a sarcastic retort. I said, well, eventually they do find the body, so there's there's that. I just had to. I was being a dad. I just had to say, just be careful. There's crazy people out there, and when you post pictures of where you are, just saying. But I can't live in fear either. My kids are all over the place. And I've told you this many times, but when I lived in Covington, we had that house that was built in 1900 and had the front door was beveled glass, so you could see from the Floyd Street sidewalk, you could see right into my house. And one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, doorbell rings, and the bedroom is on the bottom floor. I looked out, and there's two cops standing there. And this is back when, Jared, sometimes I wouldn't know where he was for a month at the time. And I remember counting the steps in my head, like how many steps from my bedroom door to this front door, and what are you about to tell me? You cannot believe the scenarios you can create in your mind before you open that door. And I remember standing there with my hand on the knob for a minute, my heart was pounding. Because typically, when cops come to your door at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not for a visit. It's like, what's this going to be? So I opened the door. I said, yes. And he said, somebody had parked a car on the street and left a parking light on. And they said, we just didn't want your battery to be dead. And I said, you know, I would have been fine with a dead battery because I'm going to have to go in my bedroom and have a heart attack. I want to say thank you, officers, but really, 3 o'clock in the morning, it could have waited. It was just a parking light. I appreciate it, but we got to find these cops something else to do. Instead of scaring the bejesus out of me. But it also taught me, next time I see cops coming to my door, they may not be bad. It may just be a parking light. Sometimes it's not what you think. I remember, y'all know my roommate Howie from college. When we roomed together, his parents were missionaries in Paraguay. And so I would go, when I would go pick up my mail from where it came on campus, I would pick his up too. He was at work. So one day, there was this big envelope that says, urgent, open immediately. And this is back when, the communication with his parents was sketchy, and it's back long before cell phones. And so I called him at work. I said, I hate to bother you with this, but I just picked up your mail, and there's this thing that's got urgent on there, and just want to let you know. And he said, open it. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, I need to know what it is. And I'm like trembling, like, please don't tell me your parents are dead in the jungle somewhere, and I've got to tell you this. And I opened it. It was from Pat Robertson and 700 Club. It was a fundraiser. I thought, Pat, why I oughta. Do you know what you and those Covington cops have done to me? You've messed with my amygdala. The hippocampus is responsible for memory and differentiating between past and present, works to remember and make sense of the trauma. With consistent exposure to trauma, it shrinks. The amygdala is wired for survival. When active, it is hard to think rationally. The more hyperactive the amygdala is, the more signs of PTSD are present. I told you days ago, I woke up and, he was like under quilts. And I looked over there, I thought, what day is it? Is he going to work? I thought, no, this is like a Saturday. And instead of me just feeling over there like, are you there? I wasn't in a panic, but I got up and I checked on my messages. I think, did he have an emergency? Because this was right after Trey had his wreck, and he was real worried about him. And then the longer it went, the more, why did he leave and not? I'm building this whole one-man show in my head. And so then I thought, well, I'm going to call him and ask him where he is. I call and I hear his phone ring. Oh, my God. He left his phone. He must have left here in a panic. So now I'm like, this is bad. Or maybe, because he rents a parking space from this woman, maybe there was a problem with Vivian's car, because she flies for Delta and doesn't have a car, so my unit only has one parking space, so he rents one on the floor below where I park. I thought, maybe it's a problem with that. And so finally, when the phone rang, I said, Ken? Yeah? Where are you? In the bed? Oh, never mind. For about 10 minutes, I've been creating all kind of scenarios, which this is when it says the amygdala is not rational. Because later I thought, you could have just looked at the front door and noticed the lock would have been pulled up if he had left. But, when I've been through a lot with him since June. You know, have you ever been through trauma with somebody? And, I mean, you're going through it with Alan right now. I mean, it's like your significant others affect you. It's easy to say, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not there with them. You didn't see what I saw. So, you know, it took a little while for me to even relax. Like, is he okay? You're not going to do that again, are you? Because that was real scary. And so your amygdala is still on high alert. When I didn't know where he was, something's gone down and it's not good. Well, he was in bed. The car was parked in front of my house in Covington. It was just Pat Robertson. So, but you have to learn to not automatically react to something because it may be completely irrational. That's why sometimes if you could just settle down for a minute before you start reacting. So many times it's the reaction to something that makes it way worse than it actually is. And I will say this, and I thank God for this. When I'm in the midst of a real crisis, I do get very calm. Like when it's really bad, I don't get frantic because something in me says, you got to keep it together and figure out what to do. And so I'm glad if that's the Holy Spirit, fine. But there's something in me. But it's before it gets to really, really bad, a little panicky. Kind of go through panic mode, and then if it's really bad, get real calm. This is this Psalm 112? Yeah. I'm going to show you this whole psalm. It's where the verse says the man whose heart is established is not afraid of evil tidings, and it's specifically talking about a man who's given a lot, and he's put his generosity's out there. What a lot of times people would call good karma. He's done so much that he's not afraid of bad news about economy or whatever, because he knows it's like Jesus saying, lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not corrupt. But I think it's interesting the way it's worded in the Message. It's just 10 verses. It says, hallelujah, blessed man, blessed woman who fears or honors God, who cherishes and relish his commandments. Their children robust on the earth, and the homes of the upright, how blessed. Their houses brim with wealth and a generosity that never runs dry. Sunrise breaks through the darkness for good people, God's grace and mercy and justice. The good person is generous and lends lavishly. No shuffling or stumbling around for this one, but a sterling and solid and lasting reputation. I love this. Unfazed by rumor and gossip, heart ready, trusting in God, spirit firm, unperturbed, ever blessed, relaxed among enemies, they lavish gifts on the poor, a generosity that goes on and on and on, an honored life, a beautiful life. Someone wicked takes one look and rages, blusters away, but ends up speechless. There's nothing to the dreams of the wicked, nothing. Basically what it's saying, now I know Jesus said it rains on the just and the unjust, but there is also something about knowing that you've done the right thing. If you're good with your conscience, there's some things that you're not afraid of. Like I know when I came out, yes, I lost a lot, but I didn't lose everything. And part of it, and this affects a lot of you here, was because I had sown mercy. You know what I mean? It's like I had, like there were some people that freaked out on me that I thought, really, you're going to freak? I mean, with everything that I know that you've told me in counseling, you're going to freak out on me. Some of the people freaked out when I said hell's not real. I want to say, you better hope I'm right. Because if hell's real, you're busting it wide open. I mean, I don't like, because, you know, you think I don't remember all the stuff you've told me? Yeah, of course I remember. But, you know, Jesus said, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And this could apply to several of you in here who said, wow, I didn't see that coming. I may even have to change the way I think about some things because you're my pastor and I know your voice. And if that's your reality, then I've got to adapt to that reality because there's nothing. I mean, you're my pastor. There's no deal breaker, and that's a spiritual thing. But it's also because, I didn't judge a lot of people, and so some of the judgment, and even some of the judgment I got, those people, the ones who are still alive, or have repented. And it might have been coincidental. It might have been. I don't know. I've had a few things happen. Oh, Lord. I don't even want to tell anybody about that. There, but for the grace of God. Like, ooh. It'd be so easy to use the touch not my anointed thing, but that might be a little manipulative. But anyway, when you know that you've, put a lot of good energy out there, it comes in handy when you need it for yourself. I'm speaking of what we went through in June with Ken. A lot of the prayer and stuff that we got was because we've been there for other people and walked with them through their stuff. And it did make a difference. Not just because of me, because of the people that knew him and grew up with him that don't even know me. But it was like he was very loved and surrounded by a lot of prayer. And that's why, here we are. He has no, there's no problem, no symptoms, and we're very grateful for that. But when you've put it out there for a lot of people, when it's your time, it's amazing how, I'm glad I laid up some treasure. All right, let me show you this. This is just something I read I thought was interesting. How does negative news coverage impact mental health? First of all, the fight or flight response. Watching upsetting news footage starts the body's fight or flight response. Adrenaline is then released, and so is the stress hormone cortisol. When our bodies are in this state, we experience the same symptoms we may experience if we were under threat. These symptoms include rapid heart rate, shallow breathing, upset stomach, etc. Let me say something about that. I'm somewhat of a news junkie, and I've had to, in recent weeks, even tell myself, you're going to have to wean off some of this because watching this nonstop isn't going to change it. It is what it is. And yes, I'm not happy about the way some things have turned out, but this guy online who says, I've decided I'm going to be angry for the next 4 years. I think, well, that's not a good plan. I mean, I'm not happy about it either, but to say I'm going to be angry for 4 years, I was like, I think you might better approach this from another angle, because that's going to do a number on you after a while. And, with me, I grew up in a house of people that loved news. My dad watched it. My mom, she watches a different news than I do, but she still watches it. And so in my world, it was, well, if you don't know what's going on, you're not responsible. You should know what's happening. And when I've watched like hours of a news channel, sometimes I think, you've seen this story on 4 different shows. What else do you think they're going to tell you about this that you haven't heard? But I'm so conditioned to watching it. Like, yeah, I know. Why am I watching this person's take on it? I've heard 3 newscasters already tell me this. Why don't I go do something constructive? That's why, a lot of people that if you've been sending me memes, political memes, and I'm not responding to you, it's because I'm just saturated with it. I don't know. There's nothing else you could tell me that's going to make me be happier about it. It's like, I get it. It's terrible. I can't. I'm out of oh my gods. I got nothing else to say. And your journey is your journey. I'm just saying, you have to be a good steward over your own mental health. And there's only, just with anything, like even if you know, if you've got family members that every time they talk to you, it's, some negative thing, you have to learn not to get pulled into that vortex with them and just know how to, use your superpowers to block negative news and not get pulled into. There's in the movie Funny Girl that Barbara Streisand played, Fanny Brice. There's a scene. It's always funny. It's like it's sort of a riff on Jewish stereotypes. But when Florence Ziegfeld sends her the telegram to tell her to come in for this audition, they go to this Jewish ghetto, and it's like, these people never get telegrams. So the fact that a guy with a telegram, like everybody in the neighborhood is, and this one old lady, when the guy walks by, she says to the woman with her, she goes, "Well, that's life for you. Somebody's dead." And I think that's so funny because they, and what, this may not be funny to you, but this line always makes me laugh. When Streisand does walk in, and her mother's already read the telegram so many times she's memorized it. And so she walks up to her mother. She says, "Mama, who is it? Auntie Rose?" Like she mentions two aunts. And she goes, "Florence Ziegfeld." And she goes, "He died?" Such a funny movie. It can also produce depression and anxiety symptoms. The news increases depression and anxiety. One study found that people showed an increase in symptoms after only 14 minutes of news consumption. These symptoms are made worse when people feel they have no ability to improve the situations they are learning about on the news. Then there's social. Well, I remember this is back when Obama was running the first time, and I had a little episode with chest pains that put me in an emergency room. I had to spend the night there. And they had taken me to a room. And so the next day, I was in there, and I was watching. Of course, I had the news on, and the nurse was taking my blood pressure, and they were saying something about him being a socialist. And I said to the TV, I thought, people don't even know what socialism is. That's so bogus. And the nurse said, "I don't have a dog in this fight. I just want you to know your blood pressure spiked 8 points when you said that." She says, "You might want to not watch the news right now." I said, "Oh, okay. They show Gilligan's Island on this TV?" Relying on social media for your news can drive addictive behavior. This is important to note since more than 50% of Americans receive their news via social media. Clickbait headlines and social media algorithms are designed to keep you coming back for more, making it difficult to stop returning to apps for your news. Was that okay? And I'm going to leave you with this because we'll finish this up next week. But I'm coming at this topic from several angles for this reason. Theologically, I want you to embrace, "Fear not, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people." It's a beautiful Christmas message. After Christmas, I also want you to think about, am I addicted to bad news? Do I assume the worst? And if I do, why? And do I assume the worst because of trauma I've been through? And if that's the case, then I need to process that better, because I should not be assuming that history is always going to repeat itself. So I'm just trying to, I'm throwing a lot of stuff to see what sticks, a lot of stuff against the wall to see what sticks, because I'm wanting us all, myself included, to like, I don't want to be a Pollyanna who's out of touch with reality. I also don't want to assume the worst in everything, including my government, I can't live like that. And the good news is, even if you don't like what's happened in our election, the federal election, there's still a lot of there's still state stuff. There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of don't just assume democracy's over with. It may not be, and you can't assume the worst. We're going to New York in a few days because we were married 10 years ago there in New York, and I don't know if we're going to be married this time next year because Project 2025 is going after same-sex marriage. I don't know. But we're going to go to New York. I've lost my wedding band. I have not been able to find it. Bishop, don't you call stuff back? Yeah, well, I've lost a couple of others, and I've called them back. I think now when I call them back, whatever that is like, nah, I'm not bringing this one back. So we're going to get some new ones. I said, let's get new ones when we go to New York. And if it's our last year being married, then is what it is. Are you afraid of that? I can't live in fear of that. I can't, you know what I mean? It's like all kind of stuff could happen to all kind of people. And you should be informed. Once you get your information, you process it, and then you move on. You carry on with life. And somehow expect the best. There is a power to believing that things are going to work out. If you believe things are going to work out, the energy you send out, here's a thought, actually causes things to work out. If you assume the worst, all you'll see is obstacles. But I've talked a lot about yes and as opposed to either or, and I think this is what they call dialectical thinking. It's where opposites can coexist. I love this. It says, I can improve myself and I can accept myself how I am. Man, that's so important. Hating yourself is not going to bring positive change. If you want to get in shape, if you want to lose weight, it can't be because you hate your body. You've got to love your body. You've got to want to be healthier. Hate is not a good motivator, okay? You could say, I am trying my best, and I still want to do better. They're not mutually exclusive. I'm a masterpiece and a work in progress. Those two things can mutually coexist. I disagree with you, and we can still be friends. I care about others, and I'm focusing on myself. I am independent, and I can accept help. I want to spend time with you, and I need time alone. I am mad at you, and I still love and respect you. I mean, this is the way mature people live. The church world developed this thing where, one little thing happens with somebody and you never see them again. That's ridiculous. I guarantee you, I'm not asking for a show of hands. But if you've sat under my ministry for any length of time, there's probably something I've said that you either don't understand or disagree with, or some decision I made you didn't like. It obviously wasn't a deal breaker with you. See, it's always people. It's true. I know. But church world is weird like that. Like I've had years of people, not so much recently, but back in the day, somebody would say to me, you're the most anointed man of God. No one's affected. And like a week later, I'm never speaking to you again. You think, wow, that's a big gear change. When I first met Ken, he started meeting people in my world. He said, I've never met somebody that people adore him so much that don't come to your church. He said, it's amazing if they love you so much. Why don't because everybody we run into, even that we did that wedding last Sunday night, I did a wedding, and one of the women that I married, she says, you probably don't remember me. I used to go to church now. My dad went with you to Peru a couple of times. I said, I'm trying to remember. I did a lot of mission trips. Well, after the wedding, she said, my dad would like to meet you. and he's ill. He's like on a walker and everything. But when I saw him, he said, "Oh, I have lost you. I've tried to find it." And he said, "You are the greatest Bible teacher who ever lived." He said, "Do you still teach?" I'm like, yeah. Like, how could I find you? I've looked for you for 10 years, 14 years. Really? Because I'm pretty high profile, you know? I'm like, I don't know what other platform I could be on. He said, "Oh, didn't he? Am I exaggerating?" What were his exact words? He said, "The greatest Bible teacher I've ever heard in my entire life." Okay, well, I still have a ministry. Who else asked me that this week? "Do you still teach?" I'm like, yeah, I never even took a week off. I have not gone a week of my life without doing what I'm doing right now, ever. Say what? Thank you. If I weren't in church, I'd say damn straight. I don't know how not to. One time, I've told you this, but a couple of months ago, I was venting to Howie about something. I said, "I'm sorry you have to listen to this." He said, "No, actually, I don't mind. You vent as much as you want to. I actually learn stuff when you vent." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "You don't even realize that even when you're upset about something, you're still in teaching mode." Okay. Well, that's a new spin on it. But, yeah, I don't know how not to do that. But the point is, when he said that, I said, "Buddy, if you can answer that question, that's the mystery of my life." And I just had to learn, well, people process that differently. And so now I've just learned when somebody says, "You're the greatest man of God," I'm like, "Thank you." Because I used to think, "Yeah, really? Well, why don't you come see me sometime?" But I don't think like that now. Now I'm just happy y'all showed up. Oh, good. Y'all, Brother Sellers is prophesying right now. Use him, Lord. Use him, Lord. Mm. Absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Even if I don't realize it's how I'm thinking, my first impulse is, what am I going to learn through this? I mean, that's just how I'm wired. And I want to help you with it. You know, like, well, this is what I'm going to learn. This is what I went through. It's not being self-absorbed. It's, my life is my laboratory. This is how it worked for me. So I'll tell you what. Well, I did that with you. That you're telling me what, because she's could be facing some very serious stuff, and I was telling her some serious stuff I could be facing in a very different arena. But I said, this is how I'm processing it, and that's all I know how to do. Is I tell, well, this is what worked for me. It's like the blind man. They said, is Jesus good or bad? He said, I don't know. I just know I was blind, now I can see. I mean, I can tell you this is what works. This is what worked for me. But I love this. I'll talk more about this next week. But I think Tricia had said this to me a while back. She said there's healing in the and I truly believe that. Like if you say, I was raised by a alcoholic, rageaholic parent, but they were a good provider. When you say "but," it's like you're defending the indefensible. When you say they were alcoholic and they were a good provider, it means that's the fullness of who they were. They weren't a monster. They were who they were, dealing with their own trauma and unhealed issues. And for those that get a revelation of that, putting "and" in everything, it's like, and I'll close with this, but I think I said this to you this week. When your heart has had a revelation of the tree of life, but your brain has been conditioned to see everything through the paradigm of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You have to get your brain to surrender to your heart. Because the tree of the knowledge of good and evil puts everything in two categories. This is the good stuff versus the bad stuff. The tree of life says it's just the stuff. It's just life. There's not the good things and the bad things that happen to me. There's just the things that happen to me. And some of them I brought on myself, some of them I didn't. But all of them have worked together for my good. And, you know, you get to a place where you say, I can't love my life. I can't love who I am if I hate the experiences that shaped me. So I have to look back on all of it and say, well, you know, it was what it was. Do I have regrets? I don't know. I just believe all things work together and put everything in the end. Let's put a comma there. Let's all stand. Did you get anything out of this today? And just, since I mentioned her, just be in agreement that whatever comes up this week, that we'll deal with it, and that God's got you. And keep Jaquita's family in your prayers. If you don't come Tuesday, just be aware of that. Please, please, please come Friday night. It's going to be so good. It's really, really going to be good. So go today and sign up if you can. Let's play the outro, and then I'll speak a blessing over you.
Contributing to Metron is quick and easy. You can give anytime using any smartphone. Text the amount you would like to donate to 404-620-5044. You will then receive a notification that you successfully completed your donation. You may also visit bishandthenow.com and click the support tab to give there as well. When you contribute to Metron, you're also donating to the charity or organization of the month. Thank you for your investment into Metron.
If you have a check, make it JESM. If you have cash, just pay it forward. Go to bishandthenow.com for the Christmas party. I speak peace to your mind, to all of your brain functions, that whatever I've stirred up through this teaching last week and this week moves you in a positive direction. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. The Lord is your light and your salvation. Whom shall you fear? The Lord is the strength of your life. Of whom then shall you be afraid? You have a blessed day today. You wake up tomorrow saying, this is the day the Lord has made. The Lord has enabled me to make. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God bless you. Go in peace. I'll see you Friday night.